Welcome to the 6th episode in the series about Norwegian and Scandinavian folklore and fairy tales. Today I'm giving you another fairy tale, again about Askeladden, but this time it's about Askeladden and his good helpers. There once was a king, and that king had heard of a ship that went as fast to land as to water. Then he also wanted such thing, and to the one who could build it, he promised his daughter and half the kingdom, and he hung the information up on the church gates all over the country. There were many who tried, you must know, for half the kingdom could be convenient to have, they thought, and the king's daughter could be nice to have too. But things went badly for most people who tried. Then there were 3 brothers away in a wooden village. The eldest was named Per, the other was named Paul, and the youngest was named Askeladden. From that he steadily sat and dug and raked in the ashes. But that Sunday, when it was known about the ship that the king wanted, it was as by chance that he was at the church himself. When he came home and told it, Per, who was the oldest, asked the mother for lunch to bring along, for now he would get on the way and tempt if he could build the ship and win the king's daughter and half the kingdom. When he had got the lunch bag on his shoulders, he stroked away. On the way he met an old man who was so crooked and godly. "Where are you going?" asked the man. "I'm going to the forest and make a trough for my father. He does not like to eat with the rest of us," Per answered. "It will be a pig's trough," said the man. "What do you have in your bag?" he then asked. "Dung," Per said. "It will be dung," said the man. Then Per walked in the oak forest and cut and timbered everything he could. But all that he cut and all that he timbered, it became nothing but trough and trough. After a long time he became very hungry and decided it was time to have something to eat. He picked up his packed lunch, but there was not a crumble left in the bag. Now, when he had nothing to eat and it didn't go so smoothly with the carpentry, he became tired of the work, took the axe and the sack on his shoulders and walked home to his mother again. Then Paul went away and tempted if he did have the luck to build a ship and win the king's daughter and half the kingdom. He asked his mother for a packed lunch, and when he had received it, he took the sack on his shoulders and set off to the field. On the way he met an old man who was so crooked and godly. "Where are you going?" said the man. "Oh, I'll go into the woods and make pig trough for a little piglet," he said to the man. "It will be pig trough," said the man. "What do you have in your bag?" asked the crooked man. "Dung," he said. "It will be dung," said the man. Then Paul walked into the woods and started to cut down and carpenter all he could. But how he chopped and how he timbered, it became nothing but troughs and pig troughs. He did not give up yet. He pushed on until well into the afternoon before he thought of getting some food. Then he became so hungry at once that he had to look in the food sack. But when he picked it up, it was not even a crumb in the sack. Paul became so angry that he turned the rucksack and hit it against the tree stump, took the axe and stroked the forest and went home immediately. When Paul had returned home, Askeladden wanted to go out and asked his mother for lunch. "Maybe I could be the guy who built the ship and win the king's daughter and half the kingdom," he said. "Yeah, that would work out," said the mother. "You who never do anything but rummage and rake in the ashes. Nah, you do not get any lunch," said the woman. Askeladden did not give in to that. He begged so long that he was finally allowed. He did not get a packed lunch. It was like that. But he took a couple of oat lefser and a lazy beer droplet with him and set off. After walking for a while he met the same old man as the two others, who was so crooked and wretched and godly. "Where are you going?" asked the man. "Oh, I was going to the forest, if it could be done, and build a ship that go as well on water as on land," said Askeladden. "For the king has decided that he who can build such a ship should have the king's daughter and half the kingdom," he said. "What do you have in your bag?" asked the man. "Oh, it's not much to talk about. It should be my lunch," replied Askeladden. "If you give me some of your lunch, I will help you," said the man. "Sure," said Askeladden, "but it's nothing more than 2 oat lefser and a lazy beer droplet." It was the same what it was. If only he got it, he would probably help him. When they came up to the old oak in the forest, the man said, "Now you're going to cut out a tile, and you're going to put it back in where you cut it out. And when you have done that, you can go to sleep." Askeladden did as he said. He went to sleep, and in his sleep he thought he heard it, chopping and hammering and carpentry and sawing, but wake he could not until the man woke him up. And then the ship was fully finished, right beside the oak. "Now you can go on board, and all you meet on your way you must take with you," said the crooked man. Oh yes, Espen Askeladden thanked for the ship, sailed away, and said he would do as he was told. When he had sailed a distance, he came to a long, thin man that lay along a mountain and ate stone. "What kind of guy are you, laying here eating stone?" asked Askeladden. Oh yes, he was so hungry for meat that he could never get enough, so he had to eat stone, he said. And then he asked if he could be allowed on board on a ship. "Yes, if you want to join, then get on," Askeladden replied. That he wanted to, and then he brought some large stones for lunch. When they sailed a little further, they met someone who was laying on a sunny hill and was sipping on a barrel tap. "What kind of person are you?" said Espen Askeladden. "And what good is it for you to lay and suck on this barrel tap?" "Oh, when you do not have the barrel, you have to make do with the tap," said the man. "I'm so thirsty for beer, so I can never get full on beer and wine," he said. And then asked if he could be allowed on the ship. "If you want to join, get on," said Askeladden. Yes, he wanted to. He got on and took the tap with him for thirst. When they sailed a little further, they met someone who was laying with one ear to the ground and listened. "What kind of person are you, and what good is it for you to lay on the ground?" asked Espen Askeladden. "I listen to the grass because I have such good hearing that I can hear it grow," he said. And then he asked if he could be allowed on the ship. There was no to that. "If you want to join, then get up," said Askeladden. Yes, he wanted to, and he stepped up, he too. When they sailed a little further, they came to one who was standing and aiming. "What kind of person are you, and why may it be that you stand and aim like that?" said Askeladden. "I see so sharply," he said, "so I can shoot straight to the end of the world." And then he asked if he could be allowed on the ship. "If you want to join, get on," said Askeladden. Yes, he wanted to, and got up. When they sailed a little further, they came to one who was riding and jumping on one leg, and on the other he had 7 ship weights on. "What kind of person are you?" said Askeladden, "and what good is it for you standing, jumping on one leg, and have 7 ship-pound weights on the other?" "I'm so easy to fly," he said. "If I walked on both feet, I'll reach the end of the world in less than 5 minutes." and then he asked if he could be allowed on the ship. "If you want to join, get on," said Askeladden. Oh yes, he wanted to, and got on the ship with Askeladden and his companions. When they had sailed some distance again, they met someone who held his hand over his mouth. "What kind of person are you?" said Askeladden, "and what good is it for you to stand like that and keep your mouth shut?" he said. "Oh, I have 7 summers and 15 winters in my body," he said. "So I must do so to not let them out. If they slipped out, it would end the world at once," he said. And then he asked if he could be allowed to join. "If you want to join, get on," said Askeladden. Oh yes, he wanted to join, and then he boarded the ship with the others. When they sailed a while, they came to the royal courtyard. Askeladden strode straight to the king and said that now the ship was finished, and stood out on the steps. And now he wanted the king's daughter, as the king had promised. The king did not like this, because Askeladden did look strange. He was sooty and dirty, and the king was reluctant to give his daughter such a man. Then he said he had to wait a bit. He could not get the king's daughter until he had emptied a meat hut the king had, with 300 barrels of meat. "If you can do it until tomorrow, you will get her," said the king. Oh yes, he could do that. If he would, you could take all 6 of them, said the king. For he thought it was pure nonsense, even if he had 600 friends with him. Askeladden only took with him who ate stone and was so hungry for meat. And when they came and opened the hut, he had one up all in a heap, so that there was no more than 6 small bacon strips left. There was one for each of the friends. Then Askeladden stroked into the king and said that now the hut was empty, and now he probably got the king's daughter. The king went out to the hut, and it was empty, that was sure. But Askeladden was both sooty and dirty, and he thought it was too bad for his daughter to have such a man. Then he said that he had a cellar full of beer and old wine, 300 barrels of each, which he would like to be emptied first. And it's the same. If you're able to drink them up until tomorrow, then you'll get her, said the king. I will be tempted, said Askeladden, but I must take one of my friends with me, can't I? He said. Yes, of course, said the king. He thought he had so much beer and wine that all 7 of them would be well off. Askeladden took him who was suckling on the tap and was so thirsty for beer, and then the king locked them down in the cellar. There he drank barrel after barrel as long as there was anything left, but the last one he spared a drop, so it could be a couple of tastes for each of the friends. In the morning they opened the cellar, and at once Askeladden stroked into the king and said he had finished the beer and wine, and now he probably got his daughter, as he had promised. Yes, first I get down to the cellar and see, said the king, for he did not believe this. When he came down to the cellar, it was nothing but empty barrels. But Askeladden was both dirty and sooty, and the king thought it was different to have such a gull. So he said it was the same if he could get water from the end of the world in 10 minutes for the princess tea. Then he would get both her and half the kingdom. Then he got hold of him who was limping on one leg and had 7 ship-pounds weights on the other, and said that he could buckle off the weights and use his legs as fast as he could, because he would get water from the end of the world for the king's daughter's tea in 10 minutes. He took off the weights, got a bucket, and set off, and he was gone immediately. It lasted and reached 7 long and 7 wide, but he didn't return. In the end there was no more than 3 minutes left until the time was up, and the king was as pleased as he had been given a crown. But then Askeladden called to him who heard the grass grow, and said he had to lay down and listen where the other friend was. "He has fallen asleep at the well," he said. "I can hear him snoring, and the trolls are whispering to him," he said. And then Askeladden shouted at him who shot right to the end of the world, and asked him to put a bullet in the troll. Oh yes, he did. He shot it in the middle of the eye. The troll made a roar, so he woke up immediately, he who was to fetch tea water, and when he came to the royal court there was 1 more minute left of the 10. Askeladden stroked in to the king and said that there was water, and now he probably got the king's daughter. There was probably nothing more to talk about. But the king thought he was as dirty and sooted as before, and did not like to have him as a son-in-law. Then the king said that he had 300 cubits of wood, with which he was to dry grain in the sauna. And it was the same. If you are able to sit there and burn it, then you shall have her. There is no doubt in that, he said. I will be tempted, said Askeladden, but I'm allowed to bring one of my friends, aren't I? Yes, if it were all 6, said the king, for he thought it would be hot enough for all of them. Askeladden took with him who had the 15 winters and 7 summers in his body, and stroked into the sauna in the evening. But the king had put such effort into the heat there was a fire, so they could easily melt iron in there. They could not come out again, for they had barely got inside when the king hung on a couple more padlocks. Then Askeladden said, "You can let out 6 or 7 winters, and it will be suitably hot as in the summer." Then it was so they could endure it. But when the night came, it got cool. Then Askeladden said that he had to lukewarm with a couple of summers, and then they slept until late the next day. When they heard the king strolling outside, Askeladden said, "Now we can let out a few more winters, but make it so that the last one smacks him right in the face." Yes, he did so, and when the king opened the door and thought they were lying there burnt, they sat there shivering and freezing so his teeth rattled. And he, with the 15 winters in his body, let go of the last one right in the king's face, so it flew upon a large frost blister. "Do I get the king's daughter now?" said Askeladden. "Yes, take her and have her, and take the kingdom," said the king.